Okay. So, very excited for this session. Very excited that you have joined this topic titled Career Power Moves, Advancing at Work while still building the complete life that you want and that you desire. And so I'm Brian Wilson. Like to view myself as a change catalyst and a stakeholder advocate. I'll share a little bit more about myself before we dive into things. And I just want to reflect back on a quote that Erica had queued up initially at the beginning of the session, as it ties back into Juneteenth and sort of the elements around that was the lack of communication and the lack of timely dissemination of information. And so I view this as my part in providing knowledge, uh, thought-provoking conversations to you all, so that you can digest the information, use that in a timely manner, so that you can not only elevate yourself and your family, but your community, in whole. And so, thanks to Erica and the entire Pathways to Excellence team with regards to that. And then of course, formally recognizing Juneteenth and the importance of that in our society, and particularly within the workplace. So, a little bit about me. My core values: respect, encouragement, and enthusiasm. Those are elements that I work to intentionally bring to whatever environment I'm in, whether professional or personal settings. Uh, I like to think about how individuals experience me and how they're going to feel walking away after a particular interaction. And so those are elements that I work to keep top of mind. I'm a New Jersey native, but I reside here in Bowie, Maryland, and so I certainly look forward to speaking with you all and perhaps even interacting in person as time goes on, given the relative proximity of everyone in the DMV area. So my parents are of Caribbean descent, right? They were born and raised in Guyana. And so Juneteenth was not much of a known concept and topic for me growing up, just because some of the differences and experiences. But when I go out into the world, when I go out into society, they see a Black man regardless, right? And of course, I have friends who, obviously this truly resonates with them and their story. And so that's why it was still important for me to be a part of this conversation, and share and impart knowledge, of what it means to not just survive, but thrive in your career, and how your ability to do that allows you to use your God-given gifts and impart onto others. Along with my speaking and facilitating and my love for that, 15 plus years in the public service. And the work that I do here is something that I truly enjoy and look forward to doing more of. Animal multi-hyphenate creative. So, music producer, not as active, but I used to be a member of the DC chapter Recording Academy, and then do a lot of photography and videography work, which I truly enjoy and truly love. And that is an opportunity for me to share my blessings and gifts back to others. But that is not why you are here today, right? And so in the chat, and I'll also share my perspectives as well, what brought you to this particular session, right? Are you looking to grow in your current role? Are you scratching your head and you're, contemplating like, hey, what is my next career professional development move? C, hey, maybe I enjoy my career. I enjoy the work that I do. But now, and we had a wonderful conversation from Dr. White, I'm intentionally exploring more opportunities, either from a side hustle or entrepreneurship aspect, to really elevate and excel my standing within life, or my family or communities, progress in life, right, along with your career. Or hey, you're figuring it all out as you go. All right. Um, I know for me, and one of the big motivators for having this discussion with you all and presenting on this topic is I believe that a wonderful way of having knowledge stick with us is our ability to train and teach that knowledge back to others. And so as I, you know, speak about this topic and share my experiences, I still too am doing a lot of work in this space to elevate myself to another particular level. And so, yes, I am a speaker and a presenter on this, but I'm also still a student as well. And that's what really resonated with me with having this conversation. And, I've been in rooms where the demographics didn't always look like me, either from a physical standpoint or even just from a background standpoint, upbringing and certain beliefs and certain values. And so the ability to navigate that in the workplace and carve out your own values and build a plan of what an excellent career and professional life looks like while still maintaining your values and still, setting your own North Star, amongst all of that. And once we become more empowered to utilize our voice at work and in the professional setting, we'll see that the universe begins to open up organically situations and opportunities and puts us in particular rooms where maybe we weren't able to fathom before. But that's the importance of being intentional and being present when it comes to career development. And so a reflection here, and I invite you to provide your response within the chat. What does freedom in the professional world, a professional environment, what does that mean to you in this day and age? I know for me, freedom is thriving, not just surviving. I know freedom is being able to bring your full self into certain experiences. So what does that mean for you all? I love that, Erica. Choosing what I do, who I do it with, and when I do it. And once again, I'm going to tie back to Dr. White because I truly loved her conversation. There's so many aspects to wealth and time wealth and the wealth of having options, right, is true freedom. And there's ways that we can cultivate that in the workplace where that can have benefits in our personal lives as well. So, when we talk about freedom, legacy, power of choice within our careers, within the work environment, understanding that even though there's no physical chains or physical restraints, we still need to be able to navigate certain environments where, hey, there still may be lack of representation, or there still may be those hierarchical structures with those invisible walls and those invisible glass ceilings. And so in the next few slides, that's why it's really important to put in plan intentional strategies within your career to leverage those strategies as our own modern day liberation tools. And what does that look like, right? And that looks like choosing purpose-driven work, right? That looks like building a life outside of just a paycheck. And entrepreneurship is something that we all should strive for. But then also understanding resourcefulness that can come from having a career where we can take those funds from having the 9-to-5 job and using that as a stepping stone into other avenues in our personal professional lives, right? And so that mindset of not just looking at it as a paycheck, not just looking at it as a job, but are you able to mentor individuals in the workplace? You know, I've been able to mentor and have great conversations, you know, with younger folks. That's very empowering for me. And so seeing that, hey, I have this job, I have this 9-to-5, but that still provides opportunities for me to get personal and professional fulfillment. And so we'll talk about what that can look like for you all as well. This particular slide here, I just want to I want to have it here as a reminder. When we talk about career progression and professional development, it really is to get us to the point where we are thriving. When we're surviving, it's hard for us to think creatively. It's challenging for us to think about being of service and being of value to other individuals and even to within our own organization. And so that could be a continuous loop where I'm in the survival mode. I'm just trying to get by with the bare minimum. But then what that also might mean is you're not putting forth your best efforts, which could mean reduction in articulating your accomplishments or being seen from leadership, being seen from your peers. And so transitioning from the survive to thrive mode has a lot of positive repercussions for our careers and for our professional development. So within the workplace, you know, it's not good enough to just to be hired. We should be heard. We want to be heard. And we don't want to just survive in systems in place, but we want to be able to shape them. And that goes to some of the policy conversations that we've had earlier today as well. And being able to shape those and what does that actually look like? So before we get into the power moves, understanding we have career aspirations and we have career goals, but also acknowledging that there may be self-imposed limitations or actual environmental limitations that we'll need to learn to navigate to be our best selves in our careers, for our organizations, for our peers, so that there are positive repercussions that come for that in our personal lives, where we can self-actualize, certain things. And growing up, we're often taught that, hey, we may have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And I have a slide here later where I reference grind versus leverage. There's only so much time in a day. We only have so much energy. And so I know lately over the years, it's been this mode of grinding in your career and grinding for success. But that's not really scalable. So what does that look like for us to leverage our strengths? Because success is not linear. I think success is exponential. You have hops, skips, and jumps. And so how do we identify those strengths that can really propel us and that are really scalable and getting out of some of that hustle and grind. And of course, hard work and working smart is a part of that, right? We won't be able to completely eliminate it, but there's some reframing of that aspect as well. I see the comment in the chat here. Code switching, yes, code switching can be exhausting, and I have a particular slide about that, right? Because when it comes to career, curating your career, professional development, there can be this muddying of the water of the difference between the two, right? Of establishing my personal brand, my values, but then is this code switching, right? And what does it, and there's different intentions behind the two. But Erica, it seems like you want to chime in here.
I was actually talking about this with somebody earlier today, and sharing with them that I've been out of like the traditional workforce for 7 years.
Yep.
And so, and I was sharing that like moving back into that space, even being around it, my filters are gone. My tendency to easily kind of move in and out of mask I put on or how I even react to situations. I had shared an example of one of the senior executives who was a lovely person. And the first time I think I wore my hair out, she said, "Oh, Angela Davis."
Oh boy.
And didn't think anything was wrong with it. And you know, when you are in that space constantly, you tend to react a certain way, as opposed to like if you said something to me today, you're going to get my exact unfiltered response, right? And so I'm thinking about this from as you brought up, when I saw that slide and as you are talking through navigating the truth and being the onlys and all of these things, it's a couple of things that came to mind. One of them is thinking about those that are entering the workforce, and especially those who had been impacted by COVID. Right. So they didn't necessarily have all of the social emotional learning and exposure to people that they may now be expected to exhibit. And then the people who are returning back to the office from being virtual for 5 years or remote for 5 years. And some of those things that used to be, regardless of where you are in your career, that used to be so commonplace and just you would switch on, switch off, know how to navigate that, but you may be out of practice because you can't just turn your screen off anymore. You have to actually engage in face to face now. So I saw this, and I don't know if we're going to get into all of that, but I was just thinking this.
I'll dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah, really relevant to so many different people at different stages, just because of the reality of being Black in the workforce. So.
And I just to pull on that thread a little bit too, Eric, because I appreciate that. So, of course, this is Brian Wilson, who just turned 40 this past February. Appreciate that. Compared to Brian from 2010 when I first got into public service, and not to say that. The way I presented myself was, something, necessarily like negative. But the reason I bring that up is, and of course, part of coaching and speaking, having these dialogues is so that the younger folks, younger generation, we can, lessen the learning curve for them essentially, right? Like, hey, I've been where you were 15 years ago. There are certain things that you shouldn't need to recreate. And so I'm going to let you know now, so it doesn't take you as long to learn versus the way I learn. So there's that aspect of that. But then I still think there's that aspect of we impart the knowledge, we share our experiences and our perspectives. But then I still think there's some organic journeys that they have to go to regardless, right? To figure those things out, and we just hope that they keep a lot of this top of mind. So when we talk, I remember when I first came into public service, and this was not intentional, right? And there were some coworkers who were surprised that like I drank alcohol, and you know, I was bothered by it initially because it almost implied that, I don't know, like I was not social, or I was coming across like in a nerdy way. Now, mind you, this is me 25 years old, right? If it was me now, I didn't care. But I had to like kind of peel back the layer in terms of, was it something wrong with me about how I was presenting myself? And it wasn't, right? It was, hey, I'm in the work environment. I'm here to do a certain job. I'm having certain conversations. I'm not having certain conversations. That's not code switching, right? That is just me being aware of where I'm at, who I'm speaking to, the vision that I have for myself, and the necessity or, you know, the removal of a necessity to have certain conversations. And some folks could look at that as like code switching, where like, hey, I know Brian from Rutgers University, and the Brian that I see is not the same. But I'm like, yeah, because my supervisor is a 1-star general. Like what are you expecting right now? You know,
it's code switching versus business acumen versus
thank you. Yes.
And really understand. And then you layer on top of that. I know you do a lot of generational work, and I'm not meaning to take you away from your presentation.
Yeah, sure.
You do a lot of generational work, and looking at, so you are millennial, I'm Gen X,
yep.
Right? But I'm studying Gen Z, and values may be different, or are different for every generational cohort. And then we have the alpha generation coming in that don't even necessarily view things in the same way. Some things that we look at as barriers, or accept, what was the word, trying to be accepted, they don't even have that pressure in the same way that they may have a pressure to feel accepted, but it's probably not the same one that we had, or what we felt, or what we experienced. And so we also have to be careful of projecting. It's a balance of projecting our own experience and our own value system and our own expectations and our own, you had the earlier, what is your definition of success, our own definitions of success onto others that may not share that. There is a mentee, so somebody to hook you up with, somebody. I
definitely want to connect with that individual, Leroy. And before I move to the next slide, because I love this discussion, Leroy, you put the question in the chat. How does this relate to Black male identity? And that's a powerful question. And this is actually something that I still work to navigate, not even just in a professional environment, but like even in a personal environment. I'll give you like 2 examples. So, I'm a Black man, I'm about like 5'8", maybe 5'9" on a good day. I like to work out, so I have a certain build. And maybe you could tell by the presentation or not, but when I'm in a work environment and when I'm engaging in good conversations and when I'm interacting with good people, I tend to smile a lot. There's a level of enthusiasm that comes out of me. And early on in my career, I felt some kind of way about that. Like, hey, like this maybe he's not like the identity of a strong Black male. He's showing a little bit too much teeth in his smile, right? He partakes in maybe a little too much extra conversation, or he's a little bit too willing to engage in particular dialogue versus maybe some of the transformation of ideas that we need to be maybe a little bit more reserved. And so, and then even like in a grocery store. Actually, I'll take you back really quick. When I was at Rutgers University, first week of school, this is like 2003, so you can imagine like the clothing that we were wearing in 2003. But it was the first week for freshmen to attend that particular week before the rest of campus got there. And so didn't know anyone as of yet. So we're walking to a local baseball game. And, I had like this stern look on my face, right? Because I'm in a new environment. So I got to kind of let, folks know I'm not a punk and, you can't get over on me. And one of my close friends to this day, he's like, hey, what's up, man? And as soon as he said that, I had like the biggest smile on my face. I was like, hey, what's going on? And he teases me about that because he's like, whoa, I was not expecting that. Like, like you you came with like a lot of, good energy. And so I think we need to normalize that, especially amongst Black men with each other, right? Like, it's okay to find joy with each other, and let some of that guard down. So I went off a little bit of a tangent, but I appreciate that question.
I want to not let you go here. So this is what happens when you let me in your. But I want to say that because this time it was June, it was summer of 2020, and I did a whole video series actually at the Black Student Fund location about working while Black. And one of the things that I remember, and I actually talked about this recently with somebody who is not Black, is that we come in literally into the workday already exhausted. And for Black men, there was a commercial out a few years ago, and it was a person that was out with his father, or he was out with his son, and he crossed the street, and people are grabbing their purses, and he has to be aware of all of these other things, even just getting to work. And it turns out he was a judge in a court. Just because he's a Black man, there's all these other things that are perceived about him and assumed about him before he even starts his workday that he's already had to deal with. And that's a whole nother, you said managing 2 full-time jobs being the one that we're paid for and the emotional labor of fitting in, or I'll say for Black men existing. Black women, it's a whole nother set of stereotypes we have. And one of the things when I'm working with women of all ages, I teach them, if they don't think that you are aggressive or intimidating, then use it for your good. I use it for my good. Yeah. I'm managing contractors and they don't even think they can get over on me at all. Yeah. Because they're intimidated. But I'm like, the fact that I'm not smiley, Brian is, right? Yeah. Another Brian that likes to emote joy. But the fact that I'm not that, people are assuming, oh, you're going to be this hard-nosed, whatever, you're going to da-da-da-da. So sometimes you can't control the stereotypes, but you can say, how do I want to leverage that for my own career progression or my own personal sanity or whatever? And I'm glad you touched on that.
And see, and I'm going to, as I move to the next slide, I'm going to jump on, not jump on, but respond to that. You practice great self-awareness with regards to that, right? And what you said is completely accurate. See, my other friend, other friends and peers, for them to act like me, that takes a lot of energy for them, which is not authentic, right? And so acknowledging that, like, hey, what are my natural inclinations, right, wrong, or indifferent? And then how do I use that as leverage and for good, regardless of what that is? Yeah. And, so I appreciate that. I appreciate that standpoint, Erica. So the next few slides, I want to highlight like 3 specific mindsets and activities as we navigate our careers, right? And whether that's advancing our careers for ourselves, advancing our careers so we can be of more value and more service to either our organizations or peers that are, coming up and looking towards us. And so problem number 1, knowing your worth, but particularly how to articulate it, right? I like, to say that, hey, if something is true, it's not bragging. And, sometimes even to this day, I have certain, I make certain accomplishments. I achieve certain things, but oftentimes I don't sit and reflect enough. I don't sit and document and recap what actually occurred and what difference I was actually able to make, and you kind of move on to what's next. And the human brain is amazing. It is not the best at remembering things, right? If you ever try to put together a resume, or if you ever try to put together a biography and you're looking to recall something that you did over the last 6 months to 12 months. So keeping that success journal has been very helpful for me. And we also need to be able to pat ourselves on the back every once in a while. Of course, getting recognition from others, but being able to recognize ourselves. And so how are you articulating and sharing what you're able to do and what your God-given strengths and talents are? And letting people know, hey, this is what I do, I'm good at it, and this is how I can help you. We need to be able to do that in the work environment. We need to be able to not just kick down doors. So the ability to articulate your worth and articulate your value means that you walk through doors that are already open. See, sometimes we're not able to walk through doors that are already open for us because we're not even consciously aware of what it is that we can bring once we get past that door. We have a history of doing certain things, but we haven't taken the time to document that, to recap that, and to acknowledge that about ourselves. And so there's doors open, there's opportunities open. There's individuals within our circle, within our network, who probably need what we have. They need our expertise, but we're not aware of that. So the doors are open a lot of times, right, Erica?
I have to jump in here. So as a coach, as a hiring official, as somebody who's in workforce development, and then thinking about it from a Black perspective, culturally, a lot of us are centered in this humility, right? We're not supposed to boast.
I got to get on that.
Right? We're not supposed to boast about our accomplishments. We think, and speaking to the younger folks especially, we think that our accomplishments speak for themselves, and they do not. And so if we are not well-versed, there are other people out there that do not share our melanin in some cases. In some cases they do, that will take credit for things, that will read the title of a book or read the headline of an article and consider themselves experts, and do not have a problem claiming that and saying that and having the confidence to say, even if I don't know it, I'm confident that I can figure it out if I get this opportunity. Whereas we're used to having to be twice as good, 3 times as good. That's what many of us, and depending on the generations, you've heard that a lot. And so you come in saying, if I'm not already an expert in this thing, I'm not going to take credit for it. Or I'm going to just wait for them to ask me and not speak up and say, this is the thing I need. This is the thing I bring to the table. This is an example of how I have demonstrated this. And if we don't have those stories down packed and practiced and ready to articulate, yes, as you say, with confidence, especially in this market, especially with the competition, especially in light of those others that will claim it even if it's not true, right? Then you're setting yourself behind. And unfortunately, that's one of those contributors to Black unemployment, to Black underemployment, because you have to be able to proudly articulate what you bring to the table and what you have brought to other tables. I'm gonna let you have this back.
Absolutely love what you mentioned, and I'm going to stick on the word humility, right? Because I struggle with that, particularly early on in my career, where it was like, man, I'm just happy to be here, right? And so, and what that means is, to your point, those windows of opportunity to truly voice what you've done. Let me say this really quick. It just came to mind. We have to be mindful of limiting ourselves and having the belief that doing so is going to help our peers or make them feel better. So that humility aspect of, hey, I was a program manager for a truly enterprise-wide implementation at a very large government department. So it was for the whole department. And of course, yes, I had a team of individuals supporting. I clearly didn't do everything. I had a challenge taking credit because the implementation was so big, and it's like, wait a minute, like I was a program manager for that, like you know, and so you start maybe giving away too much credit because you want others to feel good and you don't want to hurt individuals' feelings, but those could be missed opportunities to truly articulate, like, yo, wait a minute, I'm kind of a big deal. I think everyone here, we should acknowledge that you're a big deal, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. I'll say that, right? And so, yeah.
And you just saying that, so we'll have you back, Brian, if we get off of this. But we're talking about Black folks today.
Yes.
And one of the other things you just said, I literally, in coaching, as I'm doing career coaching, that's another side of coaching, I come across it all the time. So we'll be going through STAR examples. That's situation, task, action, result. So you say the context of what this thing is that you accomplished and what you were working on and why it matters. And then you get into the actions, what you actually did. And so often this happens with people of color. This happens specifically with Black folks. This happens with women. This happens especially with Black women, is they'll be telling me this story and they'll say, and we did this and we did that. I'm like, who is we?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to hear what we did, because I need to be able to hear what you did and how you contributed to that, to see if your contribution and your skills and your experience translates into what this organization needs. And sometimes it's even worse when the we is actually just them, but they're like, I can't say I is a bad word. And in the context of looking for a position, in the context of performance reviews and evaluations, in the context of informational interviews where you are trying to get on, it needs to be I all day. And unless you French, I think we is yes or something, but we don't need to hear we, right, in that space. And that's one of those things that, again, it goes into knowing your worth, but also being able to say, yeah, I'm a big deal. Now, there's a flip side of considering yourself a big deal.
Yeah.
That also you want to have some guardrails around. But yeah, no, I think that's important. So why are we so quick to defer credit question?
Yeah, I put that question in the chat, and I want you all to think about that. And then even as I go through these next slides, as ideas come to your mind, put that in the chat, because yes, our community, we are quick to defer credit, and that's embedded in something, obviously, right? Even like the inventions, we don't get credit for over the decades. And so maybe when we constantly see that, do we normalize that? I don't know, right? So I want you all to ponder on that. And personal branding is a strategy for thriving. And so we touched on a little bit about where code switching, that's a bit more reactive. Identifying your identity in the workplace, that's more proactive, meaning, of course, individuals, they're going to have biases. We can't control biases. We can't control the way individuals view us and see us, but we can be forthcoming and intentional about what we what we push out there and what we make and what we put on the forefront. And that's where personal branding, can really fuel career growth. When you're clear on your value, when you're confident in what you've done, negotiating promotions, negotiating projects, negotiating positions, that's when people are going to view you and experience you differently. That's when they hear your name, there are certain positive stories that they're able to reflect back on. So, personal branding, it's not about marketing. It's about creating meaning, right? Personal branding is not masking your story. It's how do I leverage my life's experiences and how do I bring that to the forefront in an empowering way? Because there's individuals, even of our same generation, older, younger, they can glean inspiration out of that. if we're intentional about putting that at the forefront. So your value is not your job description, right? It's all those other transferable skills and your mindset that, that is a part of that. And as I mentioned before, when you don't define yourself, when you're not intentional about communicating, that's where we can leave room for interpretation, where others are able to create stories and narratives because there's nothing out there for them to attach to, so they're going to come up with it on their own. And so those are areas where we can be a little bit more intentional about. I'll move just a little bit quickly here, just from the essence of time. I have a reflection question for you all. Do your colleagues know what you're really great at? Or are you hoping that they'll figure it out on their own? Have you told them, like, hey, these are my areas of strength. These are the things that I've done. Or are you just hoping that they figure that out on their own? So that's a reflection question. Power move number 2. Hey, like, what is your strategy? What do you want to be known for? What does the next 3 or 5 years look like? Have you written down, like, hey, when I want to wake up at this time, I want to work in this particular environment, I want to engage with these particular individuals, with these particular stakeholders? Like, have you written that down? And then not only have you written that down, but how often do you reflect on that? Because at least, speaking from experience, we have to embody. Speaking of experience, the question is, are you embodying the individual that you want to be? So the habits, the stories that you tell yourself, the dialogue that you engage with on a daily basis, do those embody the individual that you're looking to progress to? And I don't say this, from the standpoint of like constant chasing of, success, and success means different things. And I don't say this to say being comfortable with who we are is a bad thing. Like I said, I'm 40. I hope that there are certain elements about me that are more enlightened and more progressive in 10 years. And so I still have those aspects of achievement that I want to accomplish. And so I ask myself, hey, 10 years from now, is what I'm doing today, am I going to look at that in satisfaction, or, am I going to say, hey, like, Brian, you probably shouldn't have done that. But, oh, by the way, don't be surprised where you're at in your life, because if I look at your habits for the last 6 months or 12 months, they're going to tell me whether this is something that I actually wanted or not. And so think about that from your career standpoint. Reflection question, you don't have to put it in the chat. Do you feel like you're building a life you love outside of your job? Yes, we spend a lot of time in the work environment. I've made some amazing friends because of my quote unquote 9-to-5 job. We've been to weddings, baby showers, guys trips. And that's because I've been intentional about the connections and the environment and the people and the energy that I bring to the workspace, that I bring to the work environment. And then the last power move here, build while you climb. Who are you going to bring along with you? Don't wait for the title to be a leader. Don't wait to have project management certifications, to lead a project. Embody those behaviors now. Erica, we had this conversation about code switching. And so, like, hey, am I losing my identity by wanting more, or by not being the full, authentic self that you may have known me from when I was in undergraduate university? I think there, there's a difference, and the difference is, the intention that it's coming from, right? So code switching, like, I think that's rooted in conformity. That's more reactive. Personal branding and designing your career, that's rooted in clarity. You have a new level of enlightenment, and now you want to bring that to the forefront. Code switching, often that suppresses our identity. Personal branding, hey, we're celebrating our identity. I understand my values. I understand my strengths. I understand the experiences that I want to curate, the individuals that I want to engage with. I'm clear on that. And now I'm making that known. And that gets into the code switching is more so external pressure. Like, hey, I'm in a work environment where they might judge my hair, or they might judge whatever it might be. And so I need to hide back a little bit. Personal branding is like, hey, this is internal intention. These are my own values that are now driving this, regardless of acceptance from some external individual, external environment. In code switching, I think a lot of that is based on fear and bias. I'm worried about XYZ. When we define our personal brand, like, no, hey, I'm clear on what I want to achieve. This is my strategy. I think of how I can achieve it, and I'm going to push that out there. So that's rooted in abundance versus fear and bias. So the criticality of curating your brand, once again, we want to define our own narrative within the workplace. We want to, as much as possible, counteract biases, right? And I know that's not completely possible, but there are some elements that are within our control in the professional setting. So biases may be present, but a strong personal brand, it can pierce through that and provide additional clarity, proof, and presence. And sometimes, individuals may not have, ill will intentions. They just really don't know what we stand for. And it's our responsibility to put that to the forefront, especially in the work environment, and articulate that. So a couple of shifts for today, and then we'll kind of just end with the pause and reflection. So 3 shifts for today. Hey, define it. Know your value. What are your non-negotiables in the workplace? Are you driven by justice? Are you driven by innovation? Are you driven by empathy, excellence? Ask yourself this question. When people work with you, how do you want them to feel? And then build that into your daily habits. Secondly, own it. Every touch point has a story. There's definitely thousands of other Brian Wilsons. There's other Erica Roberts in the world. There's other Leroy Nesbitts by name. But none of them have the combination of your experience, of your knowledge, regardless of the shared name. So how do we become resourceful and leverage those stories and impart that back onto others? And then connecting it to a bigger purpose. Once again, going back to Dr. White's presentation about wealth. Hey, there's monetary wealth, but then there's other aspects of wealth that really can drive us forward into excellence. So just a couple parting questions. What's one move you'll make in the next 30 days? Right? Are you going to reach out to a mentor? Are you going to write that blog post or the LinkedIn article where you pat yourself on the back for an accomplishment? What limiting beliefs do you need to retire? Things don't need to be perfect. Progress over perfection. I'm not that good. Good is subjective. Other people are doing better than me. That's subjective as well. You're on chapter 5, they're on chapter 11. And then who can you bring with you as you're excelling on that rise? Peer mentorship, community development, siblings, family members. I know not everyone wants to go with you, but at least provide an opportunity to engage in that dialogue, especially within the workplace. a lot of committees, mentorship groups, internship programs. There are people 5, 10, 15 years, your junior, that need to hear your story. So let's not be selfish because we think we're not ready to share that. So thank you so much for this awesome dialogue. Here's a QR code. This just takes you to my LinkedIn page. I also have my LinkedIn URL there as well. This is my email. And yes, several of you mentioned that you're in the DMV area. So I certainly look forward to speaking with you all more, and a truly wonderful conversation, truly wonderful audience, and wishing you all, continued success and abundance. Thank you so much.
All righty. So we are closing out. Great job, Brian.
Thank you so much, Erica. This is awesome. I am
excited about what we can do with these conversations going forward. We're about to do the closeout on the stage.
Great.
But make certain, Brian, that you drop your information in, your contact information in, and you all in the Pathways to Excellence community will see him again. But just wanted to share that. And then think about, what do you take from this conversation, whether it is for you in your career or for someone in your family or in your village, in your community, to pass along so that Juneteenth is a day on for them and that there's a lesson learned and lesson passed. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about the rest of that in the closing. So thank you. Just
so much.
Click your stop sharing audio and video. It will be out.